My name is JC Silvey, and welcome to the Loudoun Impact Podcast. We interview purpose-driven leaders right here in Loudoun County, Virginia. My guest today, which I'm super excited about, is Loudoun County Supervisors Chair Phyllis Randall. Chair Randall, thanks for joining me today. Really appreciate your time.
Well, JC, thank you for having me. Really appreciate being here. And thank you for doing the podcast. It's pretty important right now for us to stay connected in every way possible.
So I'm sure you don't get asked this a lot, but how are you doing? You're responsible for an entire county and their well-being, but how's the Chair Randall doing these days?
You know, I have good days and days that are not quite as good. It's hard because every day they give me the count of people who are COVID positive, and if we have people who unfortunately have passed away, I get that count every morning. So that's hard to get, and it's always so unfortunate. I also, though, I lean into my support system. I'm a Christian. I lean into my church, into my faith, and so those things help. I think now more than ever, it's important that although we are physically distanced and socially distanced, that we are not emotionally distanced from one another, and that we find ways to stay connected. So I have a lot of really close friends. I have a huge family. I have a great sorority, and I have my faith that I lean on very heavily. So I'm actually doing okay right now.
Good. You have a long career in public service, but you originally started as mental health care therapist. Do you miss that work these days?
Yeah. I am by profession a mental health therapist, and my emphasis areas are substance dependence, and I work with the offender population. I do miss the work. Yeah, it was important work, and I found that so as I said, I'm a Christian, and God seemed to give me a heart for the offender population and to do things, to try to help improve those lives in ways that I could. I do miss that work. But I will say that work also informed where I want to go next, and so there were a lot of things that I learned in that position that I knew I could bring into a new role, and so I miss it. But I will also say I love being the county chair. It's such a unique position. It's an amazing way to be allowed to serve, and so I feel like I'm right where I should be and want to be right now.
So you're talking about being where you should be right now. So how did you get to this point? Tell me a little bit about what it was like in the Randall family as a kid growing up at the dinner table.
So I am from a very large family. I am one of 6 kids. There's a lot of us, and we're all very, very close in age and very close. And so it was interesting because like all my life I've been around just all these people, and if people haven't figured it out yet, I am an enormous extrovert. And so, but it's kind of interesting because in my family, I'm one of the more quiet people in my family, which tells you how my family was.
Where are you in the pecking order there?
Second oldest. I'm the second oldest. Yeah. I would say that all of my life, my parents told us one thing, and that is we have to figure out ways to serve. The service was not an option. My father was in the military. He served a couple of tours in Vietnam. He did 26 years. My mother has always been really involved in community service and our PTAs and PTOs. And so what they used to tell all of us is that service is is the price you pay to live in a free society. And so all of my adult life, even before I became an adult, I looked for ways to serve. So I feel like this is just another service. And now, of course, what my father did, serving in the military or serving as a first responder or a teacher, is probably the highest calling and service that you could have. But I also found ways to serve on commissions and committees and boards, PTAs. I was the chair of Virginia's Fair Housing Board and the chair of Virginia State Board of Corrections, both before I became chair of the county. Right. And so my goal is just to find ways to serve and to kind of go where I feel led and where I feel needed. And it hasn't led me wrong yet, and I really enjoy this position.
Did you travel a lot as a kid? You mentioned your dad having a long career as a military personnel, traveling different bases. Is that lend itself to you being an extrovert now and being able to meet friends quickly?
I was born in Stuttgart, Germany, and we lived in, Texas and Georgia, and a couple other places before we finally settled down. I was mostly raised in his last duty station was Fitzsimmons Army Medical Center in Denver, Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
So I mostly grew up in Denver, Colorado. But when you are military, you just have a lot of people kind of come through your life all the time, and it teaches you to be very accepting. It teaches you to be very malleable. It teaches you to kind of go with the flow. And so when things come that may be new to you, to try to adjust, because the military, if it demands nothing else, it demands that you adjust to new situations and to new people. And so that's actually, that's my background. But it also taught me a lot of discipline.
Mm-hmm.
My father my father was she was very military. I remember growing up, you mentioned the dinner table. I remember going up to the dinner table. If one of us would ask for like more dessert, like a second dessert, his answer was things like, "You're not authorized a second dessert. You're authorized one dessert." And that's all you receive. And he literally would check our beds in the morning to make sure that they were made properly and all those types of things. My mother once said to him, she said, "Arnold, they're not your little soldiers. They're not the military." And he said, "Well, if you give them to me, they can be my little soldiers." So I grew up being both accepting of change, but also with a high degree of discipline.
Right. So the last duty station where your dad was stationed was Denver. How did you end up in Loudoun County then?
So I met my husband. My husband of now going on 27 years. And he was in the Air Force. Mm-hmm. And he was stationed at Laurie Air Force Base. And so I met him there while he was still in the Air Force. And when he got out, he wanted to, we were engaged, and he wanted to come back to the East. Now, when you grew up in Colorado, you want to go to California because everyone in Colorado wants to go to California.
Right.
He's from Williamsburg, Virginia. So he said to me, "I'll make a deal with you. If you come back to the East with me and you stay for just 2 years, if after 2 years you really, really hate it, then I'll go wherever you want to go." And I kind of put it in my head, well, that's an easy deal. I'll just make sure I really, really hate it.
Right.
And we got here and we moved to, first we were in Reston for about a year before we moved to Loudoun. And you know what? I loved it. I loved it immediately. And I had to finally go to him and, say, "You know what? You were right."
Yeah.
And so I loved it. And so we moved to Loudoun County in 93. So we've been here for quite a long time, actually.
Uh-huh. And you still love it?
I still love it. I wouldn't live in it. I think this is the best county in the country. I love being I love being in an area where you can get to both other counties, but other states. Mm-hmm. And under a half an hour, I can be in West Virginia. In 40 minutes, I can be in Maryland. I can be in DC. It's amazing to be able to be close to other things. I love the county and I love the whole region.
Right. Everybody's morning routines is a little bit different these days with COVID. I personally, my morning routine has gotten later and later each day, and it seems everybody I talk to is going through the same thing. Are you going through that, or are you still an early riser? Your chief of staff was calling me bright and early this morning, so maybe they're still working. Yeah.
I'm not an early person no matter what. I'm a very nighttime person. Usually, if people know me, they know that when I finish a board meeting, I might finish a board meeting at 11, 12 at night, is when I go work out.
Oh my gosh.
I go work out. I mean, like literally the 24-hour gym, I go work out. Uh-huh. I don't normally get into bed until between 1 and 2 in the morning, just normally anyway. So I'm not a morning person. I've never been a morning person. My staff knows never schedule anything before 9 o'clock in the morning. So no, my mornings are pretty much the same because they run late anyway, but I also stay late in the evenings. Even now, I am right now writing State of the County address, which I will deliver on May 20th. Yep. That I'll still deliver that address. And so I was here like all weekend doing it, and I stay late until the evening. I usually get into work right now with COVID around 9:30 or 10, and I stay to about 7.
Mm-hmm. So you haven't had any days where you stayed in your sweatpants all day long?
I'm sure the county county government has not closed. So no, I'm
in a business suit.
I'm in
Yes.
the office. Yeah.
Good. So, what's your favorite takeout spot these days?
Well, there's a couple of them. I will say, this is probably not the healthiest thing, but um, I can walk over to a couple of places. I can walk over to Tuscarora Mill,
Mm-hmm.
and they have this dish with that's grits and shrimp that is just amazingly good. So I've done that a couple of times. I can walk over to Fireworks Pizza,
Mm-hmm.
and I can walk down the street to Mom's Apple Pie.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so,
Yeah.
so I think the one thing that everyone else has done in COVID is gained a little bit of weight. So I have to start walking more
Yeah.
because I will tell you, I really do try to eat local much
Mm-hmm.
as possible,
Yep.
and leave a sizable tip when I can. And so I think probably Tuscarora Mills and Fireworks are the places that I've gone the most in. But I really do. I want to try the. I'm going to drive up pretty soon to go get something from the Percival Pub. I
Mm-hmm.
haven't gone up there, and I hear they have fantastic food, and I want to be very supportive to the places that are in
That's
kind of Western Loudoun County as well. So
yep.
I'm moving all around and getting food from everywhere.
Yeah, right. What is one thing that you really miss now during COVID that you're surprised that you miss it so much?
I miss my colleagues. I miss my colleagues. This is a new board. They were elected we were elected in November, and four of my board members and my colleagues, they're totally new. And I said to them recently, I said, you know what? Being a supervisor is just the most amazing way to serve. And they're not really getting that full experience right now because we're doing kind of the telework meetings and that type of thing. So I miss my colleagues very, very much.
Mm-hmm.
I miss seeing people.
Mm-hmm.
I routinely probably visit our schools 3 times a month. I miss visiting the school kids. I miss going to our elementary schools, middle and high schools, and talking to the kids. I miss them coming here. We on a regular basis have Girl Scout troops and Boy Scout troops come through the county for their merit badges. We weren't able to do Youth and Government Day this year, so I have learned what I knew about myself all along, but I really know it now. I like people. I
Mm-hmm.
really do. I like people, and I miss just having that contact with like lots of human beings on a regular basis. So I miss people.
It's a tough reality for us. I'm in the same business of meeting people daily, and it's just strange. Even this conversation right here,
Right.
it has to do for now, but it's a little awkward a lot of times. And
It is. It's not the same. Over the weekend, President Bush, George W. Bush, number 43, put out a beautiful video. And one of the things he's talked about is when in hard times, the things that we normally do to help one another is just a hug or a touch or something like that. And those things are meant for good. But during these times, those things can be more harmful. So this is
yep,
a particularly cruel virus, and that what we normally do to comfort each other can actually hurt another person. So it is a very tough time right now.
let's pivot if you don't mind to more business topics. COVID, you kind of led into that. Can you talk a little bit about the county's response and specifically the governor's directive yesterday with the 3 phases? I know you're planning on coming out with something tomorrow to explain that in a little bit more detail. Can you do that for us right now? Would you mind doing that?
I don't. Let me say a couple of things. One, county government has not closed because county government cannot close, and so we have sent people home to work from home that who we can send home. But much of county government is essential workers anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So you think about all of our firefighters, our sheriff's department, our child protective service workers, our adult protective service workers, our judicial workers who have to interact with people. And so a lot of county government workers have to be at work.
Right.
And so we have worked really, really hard to make sure they had all the PPE that they needed and all those things so that they can keep working. So for county, and we haven't stopped our meetings. We have moved our meetings to different platforms, but we have kept on track with all of our meetings. It was important to me to do that because we were elected to do a job, and we have to figure out how to do it even in a time of COVID. So we haven't stopped that at all. And I also knew that if we stopped doing county government's functions, that a couple things. One, we would be subject to maybe some lawsuits because there's some things you have to do by certain
Right.
days. And two, when we did come back, everyone would be so overwhelmed that we would, there was no way we could have caught up. So we have kept going in county government. And I want to publicly and personally say that I really do thank and appreciate every one of our county government employees who have worked so hard and figured it out and done different things during this crisis, as well as our LCPS school employees, teachers who were not trained to go do distance learning and teach on these platforms, like
Right.
overnight, try to figure out new things to do. And so I am so proud of my county in so many different ways. And so I just want to say that first. We did see the governor's order yesterday, and I'm kind of combing through it right now. The governor's order is not very different, if different at all, from the federal order, which says that they want to see 2 weeks of numbers steadily going down before you move into phase one. Right now in Loudoun County, we're not seeing that yet, unfortunately. We seem to be in our surge period, so our numbers are going up, as are our deaths going up right now. So when we see those 2 weeks of numbers steadily going down, then we will move into what the governor had deemed phase one. And phase one actually still means that if you're a vulnerable person, you still stay home, because we want to keep them safe. And so if you're over 65, if you have a pre-existing condition, if you have an underlying issue, you should probably still stay home. But then we will start to look at houses of worship, maybe starting to open back up or do something. We're starting to look at some businesses that can still do social distancing, doing that. And then we'll kind of see how that looks. As Dr. Fauci always talks about, you move to things in phases, and then you just take a pause and see how that phase looks. And then you move into a new phase and take a pause and see how that looks. And so that's the plan right now, is to follow both the governors, so the state guidelines, but also the federal guidelines, which mirror the state guidelines.
Is this going to be a county decision, though? Every county has numbers that are different. So maybe one county could be on the downside where another is still on the rise. How are you handling that? Is that a decision that the county is going to make when you see the numbers flatten or turn? Is that when you go to phase two or phase one?
So what the governor has said is that if he was considering doing it by regions, not by county, but by regions, because if you think about it, you really can't do something in Fairfax that's not done in Loudoun, or that's not done in Prince William. They're just too close. And we have too many people who work in one county, live in another county, learn in another county, play in another county. So we're very interjurisdictional in this area. And so it's not so much county by county as it is region by region. So the governor had talked about that initially, but then yesterday he at least indicated that he wanted to have a whole of Virginia answer to this.
Right.
And so we are going to follow VDH and CDC guidelines that are set down. So since VDH is a state agency, the county will follow the state agency. So we will not do anything outside of what the Virginia Department of Health guidelines are. And at that time, now it is true that that if you're in Southern Virginia, it might look different.
Right.
But I'll leave that up to the VDH and to decide how they want to do that.
That sounds good. As you can tell, I need a haircut really bad. So.
my hair done and my nails done and all kind of stuff done. But you know what? That is secondary to staying safe right now, all those things.
Yeah.
I will say also that I am obviously very concerned about our businesses, especially our small businesses in Loudoun County. As we are keeping people physically safe, it does not escape us at all that the economy is suffering. It's why I try to always do something. Is if I'm going to buy food out, I try to do it locally. Not that I don't appreciate food chains, the big food chains, but I want to support local. So we understand that, and toward that effort, we actually have it's called the Business Interruption Fund, where people can apply for grants up to $10,000. So we had hundreds and hundreds of businesses apply for that, and there's a committee of people who will decide which of those applications are vetted to be appropriate. And then it becomes a lotto, because we can't, if they're all appropriate, then we will decide via lottery who will receive money out of that business interruption fund.
Yeah, I spoke to Russ Seymour at Leesburg Economic Development, also Tony Howard, a little bit about that fund. And I do not envy the people who are on that board to have to make those decisions, because there's a lot of applications, and the total amount of money is a lot, but it's not nearly enough to help Loudoun small businesses.
It is not. And so we know that there's a second iteration, or the third iteration of the CARES Act. Senator Warner calls it CARES Act 3.5. We do not know if there will be a fourth iteration of the CARES Act or not. It's lost on no one how much businesses are suffering right now. I will say that that our nonprofits are doing just very heavy lifting during this time as far as feeding people and helping people. But I realize that people don't want to be fed; they want to work, and I realize that. Will you move so you can get next? I realize that people want to be fed, and so we want to get people back to work as soon as possible, but also under the safest conditions possible.
Chair Randall, where can people reach you? What's the easiest way to do that? Through the website, or is there an email that if they had questions for you, or just to reach out to hear from you? What's the best way for them to do that?
The best way is via email, and that's phyllis.randall@loudoun.gov. That's the best way to reach me. I have myself and two of my staff members try to look at we get hundreds of emails every day.
Yes.
And we try very hard to stay on top of the emails, but the best way is through email. And if people feel like they want to reach out to me, I hope that they do. I will also put one more plug in there. As a mental health therapist, I will say that this is a tough time for everyone. And if someone is feeling alone, if they're feeling too isolated, if they're feeling scared, to reach out to mental health services and all the different departments that will help. Social isolation and physical distancing should not mean emotional isolation. And so please be sure to, not everyone's doing well during this time. This is really scary. And so please reach out, and do not feel like there's not people here to help you and talk to you.
Chair Randall, really appreciate your time. This is special for me. I always wanted to chat with you, get to know you a little bit more, and I enjoyed our time together talking about your background here in Loudoun County, but also the county's response to COVID. So I wish you the best of luck. You've got a lot of responsibility, a tough road ahead of us, but we appreciate your leadership.
Well, thank you, JC. I appreciate you, and I appreciate the county. How about we make a appointment right now to do this in person when we as soon as we can?
I would love that. Maybe we'll share some fireworks pizza and maybe a beer or two.
Sounds fun. Sounds very good. Thanks so much. By the way, I don't drink beer, so.
All right.
But I do a great iced tea for fireworks pizza, though.
Deal.
Thank you, JC. I appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you, Loudoun. Bye-bye.